This walk starts at the impressive Potarch Bridge. The name Patar is thought to originate from Gaelic, meaning the bull's pool, or it could be the Gaelic for a small pot, both meanings perhaps referring to a salmon pool on the river. The parking area at Potarch Green used to be the site of a market and a fair. It was also a training area for the Home Guard in World War II. Before starting the walk and crossing the bridge, it's worth walking over to the nearby Potarch Cafe and Restaurant. Outside, there are two large boulders, made famous by Donald Dinnie, son of Robert Dinnie, a local stonemason who worked on the construction of Potarch Bridge. During repairs to the bridge in the 1830s, the stones were used as counterweights to support the bridge scaffolding. In 1860, Donald carried these two stones 4.6 metres across the width of Potarch Bridge and back again. The stones weigh a total of 775 pounds, equivalent to 387 2-pound bags of sugar, or almost a third of a UK ton. In modern times, several strong men and women have attempted to repeat Donald's feat of strength, but few have succeeded, including me. I did manage to lift the iron ring handles though. In 1870, Donald became a full-time athlete, travelling to both America and Canada to compete in trials of strength. He eventually moved to London, where he died in 1916 at the age of 78 in relative poverty. It's easy now to cross the River Dee, but not so long ago, travel north and south was especially difficult as a result of the mountainous terrain and the west-east flow of the rivers. Trackways tended to follow the higher, dry ground, only descending to crossing points on the rivers, where the banks were lower and the rivers shallower. This is true for the old route south over the Grampians at the Cairn Mount. There used to be a ford and boat crossing at Inchbeare, downstream from Patar, and this may have been used for access to the Cairn Mount Pass. The boatman at Inchbeare was said to have been a survivor of the massacre of the MacDonalds of Glencoe in 1689. Initially, traffic headed east along the south bank of the Dee from another river ford upstream at Kincardine O Neil. Later, it appears from Taylor and Skinner's map, produced in 1776, that the route south was along the Great North Road on the north bank of the Dee and then across the Inchbeare Ford. Crossing the Dee was dangerous and could be time-consuming if the river was in spate, requiring travellers to wait perhaps several days for the waters to subside. After the Jacobite Rising of 1745, a network of military roads was built by General Wade and Major William Caulfield to enable the army to easily suppress any future insurrection. Towards the end of the 18th century, there was growing demand from wealthy landowners for improved communication routes to enable them to transport their agricultural products to market. As a result, in 1795, a Turnpike Act was passed in Parliament, which gave approval for the construction of a turnpike road, or toll road, from Aberdeen to Kincardine O Neil. You can still see tall houses on many northeast roads today. Estate owners also wanted easy access to the parts of their land that lay on opposite sides of the River Dee. Bridges were now required. The obvious location for a bridge was where the river narrowed at Potarch. The river banks here were high, and there was a rocky outcrop in the centre of the river, providing support for one of the arches. Thomas Telford was commissioned to survey the site at Patar and produce plans and specifications for a bridge. By 18th February 1811, the survey had been completed. A contract to build the bridge was awarded to William Minto of Afford. The cost agreed was £3,500. The work was started in November 1811 and was to be completed by 1st October 1813. All didn't go smoothly though. The partially completed bridge was damaged on 19th October 1812. In the 19th century, it was common practice to float timber down the river to sawmills further east. Forest workers piled logs on the river bank close to the river, in the knowledge that the next time the Dee was in spate, the logs would be washed into the river and transported down to their ultimate destination with little or no effort required by them. As should have been anticipated when the Dee was in spate in October 1812, the logs crashed into the construction site, causing considerable damage. There was no provision in the contract to compensate William Minto for the extra costs incurred. He had to sue the owners of the timber and eventually received £1,200 in damages. This incident instigated a change in the law, which made it clear that in future any party floating timber in this manner would be liable for any damage subsequently caused. Potarch Bridge was finally completed in June 1814 at a total cost of £4,067. This is equivalent to approximately £406,000 in today's money. Leaving Potarch behind, the 2-mile walk to Kincardine O Neil heads west along an easy, well-made path, part of the Deeside Way. As you drive through Kincardine O Neil, you would be forgiving to thinking it is a forgotten backwater. Blink and you might miss it. How wrong you would be. Apart from it being one of the oldest villages on Deeside, it used to be one of the most important and vibrant due to its position near a ford over the river. For centuries, this was the preferred route if you were travelling north or south across the northeast of Scotland. King David I of Scotland crossed the Dee here with his army in 1150. Later, in 1296, Edward I of England's army of 35,000 men crossed here. They are remembered to this day as unwelcome visitors after consuming the village's entire year's supply of food and drink in a single day. From the 15th century until 1815, Kincardine O Neil held 3 fairs each year, at which many thousands of cattle were bought and sold. The fair continued for 3 days on Bartlemuir, an area just north of the village. These fairs attracted many peddlers and tinkers who set up stalls in the streets and the kirkyard. The fairs were accompanied by much drunken revelry, fueled by the locals selling food and hard drink. Not surprisingly, it often descended into fighting and indecency. In 1777, an effort was made to curb these excesses. Naturally, the local residents resisted. They were reluctant to give up the opportunity to make a few extra pounds. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, travel from Aberdeen to Braemar was via stagecoach. In winter, the terminus was Kincardine O Neil, as road conditions prohibited further westward progress. The old Gordon Arms Hotel was built as a coaching inn in 1830. In summer, this was a staging post for travellers anxious to obtain refreshment and accommodation after the 26-mile journey from Aberdeen. This could take up to 11 hours, depending on weather conditions. The Deeside Railway, built in the 1850s, bypassed the village on its way west to Aboyne and Ballater. The reason for the diversion away from Kincardine O Neil isn't clear. Possibly it was opposition from the large landowners of the time, reluctant to give up any of their land. When the railway did arrive, villages along the route of the line prospered, while Kincardine O Neil was isolated. Christianity reached Kincardine O Neil late in the 5th century, with the establishment of a church by St. Erchard, a disciple of St. Ternan. St. Erchard is now the patron saint of Kincardine O Neil. A well was erected in his honour on the edge of the village. It seems likely that St. Erchard's Celtic church was built on the site of the ruined Auld Kirk. In 1240, Alan Durward erected a church, also believed to have been on the site of the early Celtic church. Durward's church was superseded in the mid to late 14th century by St Mary's Church, also known as the Auld Kirk. This building would have been substantially bigger as it extended east into a hospital for the poor and bedridden, founded in 1233 by Alan Durward. The foundations are all that remain now of the extension. Interesting features in what would have been the adjoining wall between the church and the hospital are windows, which opened into the church. The unhappy occupants of the hospital would have been able to listen to the church services without leaving their beds. Major restoration took place in 1799 and 1830, when the south and north walls were heavily buttressed. In the north wall, there is a recessed 14th century Gothic doorway, which is now blocked up. The odd height of the doorway suggests that the ground level here was originally much lower. The hospital fell into disuse and was dismantled in 1625. As you can see, the church is now a ruin, but it continued in use until 1862. Before returning to Potarch, it's worth taking a short walk from the Auld Kirk via the path to the river. The house on the opposite bank is called Ford Cottage, so it's reasonable to speculate that the Kincardine O Neil ford crossed the river at this point. Thomas Durward is believed to have built a bridge over the Dee near here about 1230 AD. It's likely to have been wood on stone pillars. It's said to have been the only bridge over the Dee until the old Bridge of Dee was built in Aberdeen between 1520 and 1527. Nothing remains of Durward's Bridge, if it ever existed. This is Kincardine Salmon Fishing Beat, and there's a very luxurious hut further along the river bank, available for weary fishermen to rest their tackle while having a spot of luncheon. And it is with that thought in mind, it's time to return to Kincardine O Neil and then retrace our steps back to Patar.